Today's AskReddit post, deep sea divers, what are your horror stories? Oh boy, this is gonna be a good one. Let's get started. I once had diarrhea at 100 feet. That sucked. It was amazing how warm it made me at depth, but was a nightmare to clean up. I vomited at my own stench, or maybe from the flu. Edit. Thank you for awarding one of the most truly horrible experiences of my life. Some say everything happens for a reason. I now like to think I endured that literal shit show. This happened in front of maybe 20 people, so that years later I would be able to entertain a few anonymous strangers. Being wrapped in a warm suit of my own diarrhea 100 feet underwater is now my greatest fear. Now you know why you Racid Ms. Bear Acid. Edit. Mr. Letter. I'd never want to swim behind him. Freed up to about 160 featuring Indine's Blue Hole in the Bahamas. It's where a lot of the freediving world records are set. Super neat place. Google a picture. Anyway, I'd never really been past 100 feet freediving, but this was the perfect place to do it. No current. There's ropes to keep you straight and allow a slight pull back up. Scary part is that you become pretty strongly negatively buoyant after like 60 feet. So you're basically hauling ass down while doing nothing and using very little air. So I'm dazed out a bit, feeling good and counting the lines that mark depth, and all of a sudden feel pressure like my trachea is going to collapse, and wake up and realize I've counted to the line that's around 160 featuring or so. Very scary moment because I wasn't sure if my body could take the depth or if I had gone too far and wouldn't have enough air to get back up, which is a much slower and more air intensive process. I've been scuba diving a few times and really enjoy it, but the thought of this kind of diving makes me want to throw up. Free diving is really fun coming from a scuba background. There's far less gear, so you feel much more maneuverable and free. Haha. It's just learning to breathe, that's the learning curve. Night diving is incredibly creepy. You don't realize how dark the ocean is until you are in it. I don't like closing my eyes in a swimming pool during the day. Fuck that night dive shit. I have a couple friends who did night dives for their paddy cert. Closing your eyes in a swimming pool? You never know if that shark is gonna get your ass. Jaws did a number on me as a kid in the 80s. Same with Freddy. I was an insomniac as a kid. I saw Jaws when I was 6, while on vacation in Miami. I've been terrified of the ocean ever since. I love the beach and being near the ocean, but you couldn't pay me to go on a cruise, and I won't go in the ocean past my knees. Not my story, but my parents. They like to scuba dive when traveling and have gone several times over the years. Once they visited Mexico and went diving there before I was born. I'm not sure where they were exactly, but my mom was slightly lower down than my dad and looking at the ocean floor. He was looking up and around. My mom had on a gold necklace that was floating in the water around her. It was a sunny day and a fairly shallow dive, so it was sparkling. From my mom's puff, she was going along having a grand old time looking at the sea critters below, when suddenly my dad grabbed her and started frantically shaking her arm to get her attention. She looked up and a barracuda was directly in front of her, closer than was comfortable and staring intently. Scary teeth on full display. It was focused on the shiny necklace and was just hovering there, transfixed. She slowly moved up her hand to cover the necklace, and they slowly and calmly moved away from it, and it took off without bothering them anymore. But still pretty unsettling, and taught my mom to be a little more aware of her surroundings when diving. We go diving in the Florida Keys. Last thing before we go in is to check for sparkly jewelry. The cooties will come from anywhere when they see jewelry sparkling. Sharks don't bother me, but barracudas are true nightmare fuel. I live there and woo, lem tell you never know what'll come up right next to you. I wear heavy prescription lenses and can't wear contact lenses. Halfway through a week-long liveaboard dive trip, someone dropped a tank on my prescription mask and shattered it. I usually had a second set with me, but could not find them and only brought one, because hey, nothing had ever happened before. I am functionally blind without corrective lenses. I can see colors and that's about it. Starting about 5 inches from my face. I was devastated, but decided to go diving anyway. With my husband as my seeing eye diver, I could see my gauges. so I felt reasonably safe. It was among the most amazing 3 days of diving I've ever had. I saw the colors, shapes, and movement without being focused on the details. I actually took many of the best underwater photos I'd ever taken. I wasn't worried about focusing on a particular coral or fish. I was looking at the larger color patterns. So it didn't turn out to be the disaster I'd thought it was. Thank you for sharing. I got the bends once. I was careful, followed my charts and my computer, had appropriate depths and surface time, but I didn't drink enough water so I was all out of whack. Felt fine until I got home. Mild headache. Then I woke up and it was just pain in my left arm, elbows, fingers. Couldn't even bend them without bad pain. My headache was intense and I was so dizzy. Called my older, more experienced dive buddy and I got rushed to the hospital. Docs got me hooked up and fluids, checked my dive logs while the decompression chamber was set up, and then got me in there with a nurse. 8 hours in a tube about the length of a car but as wide as maybe a double bed. I was on oxygen and hooked up to an IV and it was so loud, with all the air rushing in. As soon as I got to depth the pain vanished. It was crazy. I'm fine now obviously, but I wasn't allowed to dive for a month which sucked, but hey, the dives were pretty great. The bend sounds terrifying and painful. I think it was the Brooklyn Bridge or another large early bridges where they found out about the bends. They'd make these large underwater areas that were dry, but still like 100 feet deep underwater so the workers could dig out the footings for the bridge and they'd be under pressure down there under the water and people would constantly get sick coming out of them. Could you imagine having that happen to you without knowing what the hell was happening or how to fix it? My biology teacher told us that she once was swimming in the south of the Philippines because she was trying to find an elusive seahorse and she went quite deep at night when they are more active and she got attacked by a shark and her team got out fast. The next day they found a turtle that was bitten in half, shell included, that was pretty big and it's supposedly the last time she went diving in that area. Sounds like a tiger shark. One of my diving instructors had a scary as hell story about diving on a reef and having a large one charge her out of nowhere. She turned before it hit and it bumped her air tank as it veered to the side. Needless to say she fell as soon as she could after that. Tigers and bulls scare me more than the idea of great whites. Thankfully I've never encountered anything bigger than a crested horn shark while diving. However, knowing fishermen occasionally pull large bull sharks out of the river I kayak in makes me very nervous. Was doing a boat dive and came up to find 20-foot swells. We just had to chill for a while down under until the boat would calm down and we could actually grab the ladder without getting smashed. I remember seeing the ladder going up and down 6-8 feet at a time. I finally grabbed the rope and climbed up as fast as I could. I hung onto the ladder and the boat crew grabbed my BCD and hauled me out of the water and onto the swim step. Half the divers puked on the way back into port. That was the roughest conditions that I have ever been diving in. What's a BCD? Whoa, that sounds really intense. Glad you're okay. That must have been really scary. Thanks for sharing. Buoyancy controlled device. It's the vest looking thing that divers wear that holds all your equipment. I'm hardly a deep sea diver. My deepest dive to date is 111. This incident actually happened in about 8 feet of water. Crystal River, Florida. Known for attracting manatees in the winter. They don't let you scuba dive there anymore. And the dive master suggested snorkeling this dive because it was shallow and it scares the manatees off. It was my first set of dives out of certification. I was putting my gear on, damn it. So there's 2 manatees in the immediate area. An older juvenile who was hanging out and loving the attention from the snorkelers. And what we assumed was likely his mother. I had a little disposable underwater camera. As soon as I hit the bottom, the big one approached me. I moved the camera out of my face and she just got closer and closer, until she literally grabbed the regulator out of my mouth. Luckily my skills were still very fresh in my mind and I calmly grabbed my octo. But I spent the entire dive trying to get far enough away to get pictures of her. She was a nosy pest. Edit. I do have pictures from that trip but they are on a CD at my father's house. I will see if I can get my old PC booted up to retrieve them when I'm there on Monday. I did Crystal River years ago. Really murky water. Probably 10 minutes of experimenting with fins. It was my first time, and then suddenly a huge adult manatee appeared out of the murk right next to me. Seriously enormous. Like the size of a sofa. After nearly having a heart attack, I realized it wanted its armpits scratched. So I obliged. It's a crime to pet them, but I won't tell on you this once. Only thing that really scares me is lung expansion injuries. So the one time I was freaked out was swimming near a wreck at about 100 feet. I lost perspective and buoyancy control and suddenly realized I had surfaced about 40 feet in 30s or less. Visions of the bends and a popped lung instantly came to mind and dropped a ton of air from my BC to get back to depth in a hurry. Got a massive squeeze from it in my ears, but it gave me a chance to calm the duck down and get a better sense of where I was and re-establish buoyancy control. Bottom line, the scariest things that can happen while driving is the shit you can do to yourself. I was just wondering about collapsed lungs. My right lung collapsed several times in 1 year. For no reason at all. 2 surgeries later and I'm pretty scared of flying still. And I would definitely never try diving. Monkey covering eyes. It wasn't exactly a deep dive, but it was one of the most terrifying moments of my life. I was on a beach dive with my parents, having swum from the beach out to a small reef and then descending. It was only a few minutes after getting down to the reef that something started going on with my parents. My mother was agitated and clutching her chest. We surfaced and she started spitting up dark liquid and struggling to breathe. Fortunately, it was a busy beach and after we inflated an emergency buoy, lifeguards rushed out and carried her back to the shore where an ambulance waited. It turned out she'd had swimmer's edema induced by the greater pressure. Things turned out fine, but having a medical emergency underwater in the ocean is especially level of scary. That sounds terrifying. I couldn't imagine just start spitting tons of blood out having your damn lungs bleeding. No thanks, yikes. Glad she made it though. I dove the Great Blue Hole of Belize when I was 16. I was 150 feet underwater, and about a total of a dozen bull reef sharks were swimming above and below me in circles. Regardless of all of the sharks, 11/10 coolest experience I've ever had. I hear it is always full of sharks but never hear of any improprieties from their side. Dead men tell no tales. Pirate flag. I was diving in the early 90s off the coast of Florida. I had been using a spearfish ineffectually for a few minutes when I heard a strange grinding noise to my right. I turned my head to see an enormous set of barracuda jaws grinding just inches from my face. I still recall the fish's eye rotating around to check me out as if considering it should take a bite or not. That is so ducking scary. First thing in this thread that's given me actual chills. The people with the worst stories aren't here to tell the tale. Holy shit. Night dive on the Great Barrier Reef with my partner who was learning to dive. Myself, about 10 years of diving, and a diver master. First night dive for my partner, who had been hearing from the two of us about how incredible it is. Night diving is one of those amazing, life-changing experiences completely different to daytime diving as the sights and sounds of the reef are radically different. Plus viewing the reef through just the small areas of light from your torches changes how you process the experience. It's exhilarating and incredibly zen at the same time. As we're circling back to the boat, the sharks, who have been standoffish but curious as they usually are, come in and one has an inquisitive bite of the diver master's fins. Never seen or heard of sharks getting this aggressive with divers. So the three of us damn near catapulted ourselves out of the water and cut the dive short. Have never been worried about sharks while diving until that moment. Normally, they're more afraid of you than you are of them, but not this time. I was diving with a mom, her husband, and their son on a night dive. IDK how many dives they've been on, but the mom for some reason decided to just go up without signaling anyone why. She did a thumbs up signal, which means she needs to go up, and when the dive instructor signaled back asking why, she just went up. So the guide is trying to get her to come down when a boat comes across and runs her right over. I forget the exact size of the boat, but it was big dual motor. Blood was everywhere and we had to rush out because there were a lot of sharks in the area. She died instantly, I assume. I didn't see much once we surfaced as I was busy vomiting from everything. Edit. I realize I worded this poorly, so I reworded it. Did she survive? That sounds absolutely terrifying. No, she died instantly, I assume. It was a pretty large boat with a dual motor. I wear contacts, so getting water in my mask is extra bad as I can't open my eyes underwater. Shortly after being told about a shark colliding with my friend from behind and removing his mask, I am pretty scared about this. Not sharks in general. And I see a shark heading for me. They are curious. They often shoulder bump you as they turn at the last second. But she wasn't changing course. I stayed calm and still as long as I could, and at the last second before she hit my mask I ducked. Except instead of ducking under, I just headbutted her right in the nose. Everyone saw and thinks it was the funniest thing ever. I may be the only person alive who headbutted an 11-foot shark in the nose, but it was because I was scared she would take my goggles off. Not exactly a horror story, but that one time as we were circling a reef I saw a huge eye that belonged to something buried in a sand. We just looked at each other as I passed by. I can tell it was definitely curious but non-aggressive. Had a weird feeling afterwards. How huge? About 3 times the size of a human eye. I'm really wanting a marine biologist to come chime in and tell me what that thing probably was. The title alone of this. Nope, 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 nope. Are thalassophobia. Are the depths below. Wasn't deep sea and wasn't diving. Snorkeler for life. Man. Was in the reef off the coast of Belize. Super calm area. Known for its shallow, impossibly clear, bathtub temperature waters. You know, in Finding Nemo, the drop off? It's real. It's hard to see until you're right at it. But the current changes and suddenly you're getting thrown around by currents and waves. I get body slammed into a coral. They're sharp Methodicas. Had a spear with me cause it was lobster season and I basically stuck it in the sand and climbed up it like a flagpole just to get a couple feet above the coral so I could kick like hell and get back to the calm part so I can surface without getting sucked out. The scariest part is realizing the kayak tied to the marker buoy is suddenly a good 100 yards away and you don't even realize you've drifted that far in only a couple minutes. Anyway. Have a neat scar from the coral all over my hip and thigh that I always have to tell people is not road rash. A living undersea rock shiv me when I was too stupid to wear a wetsuit. It seemed silly. The water is 25 degrees. I was diving under an oil rig between Long Beach and Catalina Island. I was collecting sea scallops at around 60 feet or so, and knowing that there were seals all around I always kept an eye out for sharks. You just can't help but think about them. So I was just about to finish my dive, but I was looking for one more scallop for dinner and I saw a blur swoosh right by me just in front of my face. My initial immediate reaction was shark. But it was just a damn seal playing with me. I literally was screaming underwater for a couple of seconds. Funny thing is I have over 25 logged open water dives. Some at night. Mostly around Catalina, and I never saw shark. I lost 2 divers on a dive and had to get the Coast Guard involved. I can tell the story if folks are interested. That would be the point of the thread. I saw a giant squid once. Almost got me, but I managed to fend it off with my trident. Found Poseidon. I was on a night dive looking for a resident 6-gill shark when a large grey animal darted past me. Just barely illuminated by my light. It was way faster than I was told the shark would be and I couldn't quite make out the size. Then it happened again on the other side. Both times it was in my peripheral vision. Barely illuminated by my forward aimed spotlight. And very fast. For some reason when I got to the bottom, I decided just to sit on my knees and aim the light in one direction until something happened. As it turned out, the beast was a harbor seal using the light to find fish to eat. She hung out with us for a while, which was a pretty cool experience. We never found the shark, but I did think I was being hunted for a bit. My dad has shit his wetsuit while diving. Got up to the surface and had to peel it off. I swear these comments LOL. It's either some crazy shit like people getting hit by boats, animals, or equipment failure. Then there's oh yeah my dad shat his wetsuit LMAO. Bro, you actually watched the whole video. I'd give you a high five if I was a human. Make sure to click the like button and subscribe for more great content. See you next time.